And I got a big sign right here. It says record with an exclamation point, and sometimes I still forget to record, but that's all right. We're here. So like I said, I took parts of chapter 6 and I built them into chapter 5, because chapter 5 is about how to set up a business. Chapter 6 about entrepreneurship. So they kind of blend well together. But I didn't think there was enough in chapter 6 to really do a whole class on it. There was kind of, like I said, there's a lot of fluff. So we're going to do chapter 5 combined with chapter 6. And let's get started with that. Any questions before I get started? Everyone knows today's Valentine's Day. All right, we already covered that. No, I'm kidding. That's all right. All right. So let's get into how to form a business. Easier said than done, by the way, guys, and we'll talk about that a little bit. So we're going to start off, we're going to talk a little bit about entrepreneurship, and then we're going to watch a really good video where a guy talks about what you really go through, what it's really like. There is this dream world concept of what it's like to be an entrepreneur. And it's actually very hard. It's a lot of work because these guys accept the risk of starting and running businesses. And there's a lot of risk involved. Even if you have a lot of money behind you, there's still risk involved. And he gives a list of some notable entrepreneurs there. DuPont, whose name I'm not even going to try to pronounce that entire name. My French is terrible, by the way. I can get by with Spanish pretty well, but my French is awful. So I'm not even doing that. But in 1802, he developed DuPont, which is a famous chemical company. Dave McConnell.
Don't worry, I took French for now to do this.
Okay, say it for us.
Refaire, Irene, DuPont, du Nemours.
There you go. There you go, guys. Sean gave it to us. Thank you, Sean. You got it. I never took French. So my wife's good at it. My wife can do it. I can't do it.
I even got a medal for it.
David McConnell borrowed $500 from a friend. He started Avon. Hugely successful company. George Eastman started Kodak with a $3,000 investment back in 1880. They're still going strong making cameras. Jeff Bezos, borrowed money from family and friends to start Amazon. I don't know how many of you remember, but I guess you guys are, even your youngest ones will probably be old enough to remember if you were paying attention back then. Amazon started as a book company. It's where you bought books online. That's where the whole thing started. It was buying books online, and it just grew from there. And Bezos, of course, has grown it into this, billion-dollar empire. He owns the Washington Post. There was talk of him buying the Washington Commanders, which evidently is not happening. Someone's going to buy him, but it's not going to be him. But he did an amazing job with Amazon. Now, why do people take this challenge? Well, you're taking a huge life step when you become an entrepreneur. There are 4 main reasons people do it. One is the opportunity, right? The opportunity to really grow and become somebody. The profit. You can make a lot of money. You can also crash and burn, all right? But you can make a lot of money. The independence of it. And there's kind of an illusion to the independence. And when we get into the video, the guy's going to talk about that, right? There's this illusion about what it is to be an entrepreneur, but you are working for you. That is a big point. And the challenge. A lot of people love the challenge of it. So what does it take? Well, you have to be self-directed, which basically means you have to be disciplined. You have to be self-nurturing, right? You can't be someone with a thin skin. You got to be able to pick yourself up when you're down. You got to be able to keep yourself going, because a lot of times people are going to be cutting you down left and right. You have to be action oriented. One thing about entrepreneurs is they take action. They don't sit and hem and haw about decisions forever. They take action. Highly energetic. Most of these guys and men and women are very highly energetic and tolerant of uncertainty. Uncertainty can really scare people a lot, especially in business. So there is a tolerance of uncertainty. They look at uncertainty and they say, okay, you know what? It's all right. We can deal with it. Why people take this challenge again? Turning your passions into opportunities. And that's when people start. They start businesses that they're passionate about. And most sources of innovation are like a flashlight. It's like, bang, it just comes on. Hey, this would make a good idea, or this would make a good company. And if the idea is a good opportunity, you have to look at what would make it a good opportunity. One, it fills a customer's needs. That's the biggest one. And can you turn that need into a want? And we'll talk about more about that in marketing, because that's what marketing does. People think marketing is about sales. It's not. Marketing turns needs into want. You need to eat. I'm going to make you want my cheeseburger. You need to eat. I'm going to make you want my pizza. You need to sleep. I'm going to make you want to stay in my hotel. That you can tell them in the hospitality business, right? That's what it is. But you have to fulfill a need, and then you got to turn that need into a want. You have to have the skills and resources to start your business. In my business, hospitality, there's a huge failure rate, and we'll talk about this more down the road. But part of the reason there's a huge failure rate is a lot of people get in the business who think they know how to do it, and they don't. They don't have the skills or the expertise to do it. You have to be able to sell your product or service at a reasonable price and profit, and that's where the research comes in to make sure you can do that. You can get your product and service to customers before the window of opportunity closes. In other words, before someone else starts doing it, and build up your business before someone else steps in there else who may have more resources and starts doing it. And you're able to keep the business going. You're able to keep investment coming. You're able to keep profits flowing and that sort of thing. Ali Webb was the founder of Dry Bar. I live in Old Town Alexandria. There was a dry bar here in Old Town. And every time, my wife and her friends have used it a couple of times. And every time I walk by Dry Bar, there's people in there. There are women in there getting their hair blown out all the time. She launched it as a mobile business. And then she opened her first shop in Brentwood, which is right outside of LA. Customers were attracted to affordable blowouts and salons that look like bars. They're kind of fun. And it's more affordable than just going to a regular salon. She and her partners raised money and got a large investment, and now they're franchising. And they're franchising. I'm sure this one in Old Town is a franchise. They're franchising all over the place. So yes, there are a lot of success stories, but they're not all success stories. So we're going to look at that right now. As you know, I love my TED Talks, but he does a really good job of telling you exactly what it's like, what they don't tell you about entrepreneurship. Let's give it a listen.
At TEDx, about to give a killer talk. If only they could see me now. Next stop, Oprah. Hashtag living the dream. Hashtag winning. Hashtag crushing it. Oh, how could I forget? My life is amazing. I wake up at 5 a.m. every day with a big smile on my face. And that's without an alarm clock. And you know why? Because my passion wakes me. You see, after an hour of power yoga, I hop in a cold shower where I visualize my goals before I jump on a podcast and green a green smoothie. That's before most of you have even had time to scroll through your first social media feed. Yes, unlike you, I have the freedom to decide how I spend my days. I go on holiday when I want, where I want, and for how long I want. But you already know
All right, give me a second, guys. I'm not sure why I did that. I didn't do it the other day when I was reviewing it. So give me 1 second with the video here. All right, I apologize for that. Let's try this again. Optimize video clip. Maybe that was the problem. All right.
And you know why? Because my passion wakes me. You see, after an hour of power yoga, I hop in a cold shower where I visualize my goals before I jump on a podcast and green a green smoothie. That's before most of you have even had time to scroll through your first social media feed. Yes, unlike you, I have the freedom to decide how I spend my days. I go on holiday when I want, where I want, and for how long I want. But you already know that because you obviously follow me on Instagram. You see, success is my first, last, and middle name. Yes, you've guessed it. I'm an entrepreneur, and I'm living the dream. It's funny because it almost sounds true. And it makes me wonder, who is that guy? Well, that's me. At least that's what you would think if you looked at my social media feed. You see, we're currently riding a wave where entrepreneurship is hip. And like any fad, when it doesn't go to plan, it's really easy to put on a brave face, keep up appearances, and pretend like you're successful even if you have no idea what you're doing. But when did it become cool to become an entrepreneur? In fact, who here runs a business? Do you feel cool? Because I don't know about you, but I do not feel cool. In fact, most of the time, I feel lonely. I worry, I stress about money on a daily basis, and this was so not meant to be the plan. You see, about a year ago, almost to the day, I quit a job after spending a decade working across the corporate sector, the non-for-profit, and the charity sector, thinking that if I quit my job, everything I ever dreamed for in life would come true. Because obviously, being your own boss means that you have the flexibility, freedom, and success is bottomless. Well, it wasn't the case. You see, maybe what it looks like on the outside through all my podcasts and YouTube videos, it looks like I'm having a ball of a time. But I actually spend 80% of my time staring nothing but a screen, and sometimes I don't even bother leaving the flat or wash. But don't tell my girlfriend that, because she thinks I do. And this got me thinking. It's the same thing that when my friends call me up and say, hey Mark, do you want to catch up for a beer? And I say, I'm sorry, I've got other plans. I'm busy. But I'm not busy. I'm just really, really worried about how my business is actually doing. And so I feel like I can't share that. And this is something that I've seen over and over again. So I'm the host of the most unpronounceable podcast ever known to mankind. As dyslexic, I could have picked a better name. The Unconventionalists. And effectively what it is, I get to speak to a whole bunch of really exciting people from all walks of life who've experienced different levels of success. And let me tell you this. It doesn't matter if you're a one-man band or if you're a business with 1,000 employees. If you have 100 followers or if you have 1 million. The resounding feeling is how tough the journey is and how lonely it can sometimes feel. Now, if you look at the statistics, it's pretty scary. Out of the 5.5 million businesses in the UK, 76% of them were started by people who employ no one but themselves. So it's a pretty lonesome journey, to say the least, for almost 3/4 of us. And yet we feel like we can't open up and talk about it because we've made up that tears don't sell. And so we live with this dirty little secret, except this secret is something that everyone who's ever started a business knows oh too well. And I started thinking, if you look at the statistics and you look at Company House data, it looks like, actually, in 2016, it was another record-breaking year of 75 new businesses every single hour. That's insane. Bloomberg says that actually 8 out of 10 entrepreneurs fail within the first 18 months. And there was a study by the Professor Michael Freeman from the University of California that basically studied the link between entrepreneurship and mental health issues. And he found that 1 in 3 entrepreneurs experiences depression. When the hell did entrepreneurship become trendy? Especially when you look 20 years ago, and it was basically a bunch of geeky guys living in a box staring at a screen. Well, you see, when I quit Movember, I thought that everything was going to come to me. I could have never imagined that after spending 4 years in a dream job as country manager, raising 2.8 million euros for Men's Health, hobnobbing with celebrities, being interviewed on national television, and being part of an incredible team, all that to start my own business would be so tough and lonely. So when my friends and family ask me, so, how are things going? I smile, I grind my teeth, and I say, great. When really, what I want to say is, this is the toughest thing I've ever done in my life. I'm really struggling. And if you can relate to this situation, I want you to know that actually being vulnerable and telling your friends that you're hurting is the best way for them to know you need help. And I know that's scary. But instead, I've been guilty of putting up a mask and feeding the myth that being an entrepreneur and living the entrepreneurial lifestyle is the lifestyle we should all aspire to. And that got me thinking, surely there must be a reason why so many people are thinking about starting their business. Well, I think, this is my opinion, that because of the thanks to the rise of the superstar entrepreneur, including Elon Musk, Richard Branson, and Steve Jobs, the rise of the superstar entrepreneur has given birth to the new aspiring celebrity of the 21st century. Social media and front cover magazines have labeled it. They make it sound sexy and they make it sound cool. And you know what it is? It feeds into our need to be recognized, to be famous, to be rich. But is the allure of being an entrepreneur for the chase of fame and fortune really all there is to it? No. It goes deeper than that. Consider the Gallup study that found that 87% of workers worldwide feel emotionally disengaged from the work they do. And as a self-proclaimed millennial, we've got a bit of a pickle, especially when you know that millennials are the most purpose-driven generation in decades. So there's no denying that we're currently facing a crisis at work when it comes down to finding purpose. Take a look at this mythical ad of a dream job. And for those of you at the back who can't read it, men wanted for hazardous journey, small wages, bitter cold, long months of complete darkness, constant danger, safe return, doubtful. Honor and recognition in case of success. Would you apply to that ad? Well, according to the book, The 100 Greatest Advertisements, 5,000 men responded to Sir Ernest Shackleton's ad ahead of his third expedition to the South Pole, Endurance, in the early 1900s. 5,000 people. And you know what else this ad could apply to? You've guessed it. Pretty much any startup or any new business or any bold idea you come across. Because the way that he sorted out these 5,000 applicants was by putting them either in mad, hopeless, or possible. And if you've ever tried anything bold in life, you'll know what I mean when I say it's very difficult to know in which category you come across. So the question becomes, why would thousands of people want to join Sir Shackleton down to South Pole? And would this still be applied today? And if you think it wouldn't, think again. Mars One, a controversial Dutch company, announced in 2013 that its mission was to establish a permanent human settlement on Mars in 2023. 2 men and 2 women would originally be sent, and then 4 more would follow every 2 years. The catch? There is no return expected to planet Earth. Labeled as the one-way ticket to humankind's biggest adventure, more than 200,000 people registered their interest in 2013. That's insane. So actually, why would people join Sir Shackleton 100 years ago? And the reason why hundreds of thousands of people are willing to leave everything behind to join history to the chase for Mars is the same reason why so many people are attracted to the idea of becoming an entrepreneur. It's our deeper yearning for a sense of purpose. Now, Professor Steve Taylor, the senior lecturer in psychology at Leeds Beckett University, said that not having a sense of purpose makes us more vulnerable to anxiety, boredom, and depression. Because baked in every single human brain, from our ancestors fighting off saber-toothed tigers to us wrestling a really bad Wi-Fi connection, we all have a desire for purpose. It's our thirst for a mission, it's our yearning for a quest and to fulfill it. Psychology science even went as far as saying that having a sense of purpose gives you a much better chance of having a longer life than pretty much anything else. So your life depends on it. It's a bit of pressure, right? Well, that kind of pressure is exactly where we go wrong about finding your purpose. You see, what really bugs me is that people make up that when you talk about finding your meaning of being or your purpose, you've got to find the meaning of life. You've got to find the meaning of your life. And that's a really big ask. The way I see it is that if it was a thorny issue for Aristotle, then I should probably keep it simple. And if you don't know what a quest is, and you don't know what purpose is, look around you. They're everywhere. They're in the books you read, in the stories you tell, in the movies you watch. I've been obsessed with this concept of quest and finding a quest. And I've spoken to hundreds of people who started theirs. And this is what I've learned. They come in all shapes and sizes. They're not measured by how impactful they are, but rather how they make you feel when you think about them, when you're actively pursuing them. I want to give you an example of a really small quest, what I've come to label micro quests. Now, you see, a few years ago, I had this really stupid idea to see if I could start a drink startup in 7 days with £100. And this was while I still had a full-time job, by the way. So I'd wake up at 6 a.m., do recipes. I was traveling, try and cross the border of Belgium with 1 kilo of protein powder in your bag. And the crazy thing is that I ended up working my butt off for 7 days, went to a festival in the woods, and I sold all my plant-based protein shakes. I made a whopping net profit of £9. It was the happiest I'd been. Of course, I had no idea if this was going to work, but actually, when you look at it, I was trying to answer a deeper question. Is it possible to start a business in a week with £100 or less? Now, I can't tell you what your quest is, but I can tell you what it feels like in case you hear it knocking on your door. It's something that, for whatever reason, is grabbing your curiosity, even when you don't want it to. Perhaps you're thinking about it when you're in the shower, or maybe it's something to do when you're doing over the weekend. But I'd like to share with you another example. Take Laurie Portker, who, for 1.5 years, decided to paint 100 individual pieces of art for 100 people in her life who meant something. From her husband, to her hairdresser, to the mechanic. Her quest was to express her gratitude through her art. And in the end, she brought all these people together in a really emotional exhibition in her hometown of North Carolina. Now you see, this yearning we have of having a quest, having a purpose, is at the heart of why so many people believe that starting a business is the only way to get that sense of freedom, adventure, and purpose. But it's not. Of course it can be, and admittedly, it has been for me. Yes, 1 year ago when I quit my job to start my business, it's been the hardest thing I've ever done. But it's also been the most rewarding thing I've ever done. And this is what I've realized, is that actually, you think you want to start a business, but what you're actually looking for is a quest. You can find purpose and meaning working with an organization, and you can find it on your free time, and you can find it on the weekend. If you don't know where to start, which tends to be the majority of everyone I speak to, trust the things that you're curious about. Follow the things that you're interested about. Those are your breadcrumbs. Don't dismiss them. They sometimes feel like there's no way I could be interested in barbecues or violin. And next thing you know, they lead you to your quest, Those are the breadcrumbs. Trust them. And if they scare you, that is so good. Because what scares us most is most often what we most need to do. Take Paul Graham, the co-founder of Y Combinator, the most sought-after startup accelerator in the world, who said, it seems in order to do really big things, you need to start by doing deceptively small things. So whether your quest is an entrepreneurial one or not, I urge you to start today. Don't wait. Because if everyone had a purpose, no matter how small, the world would be a better place for us all. Thank you.
He's right. He was right on a lot of points. People view entrepreneurship like, you watch the old movies like a knight, or read old stories like a knight would view a quest. This is my destiny. This is what I have to do. And maybe it is. But he also tells, he also at the beginning, he talks about how that with entrepreneurship, he talks about how hard it can be. And people think it's going to be one thing and ends up being another. It's going to change my life. Yeah, but it's going to, but maybe in ways that you don't want. You have to really look into it. No one's saying don't be an entrepreneur. We have a free market system. We need entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs are what made this country who we are. But think about it, really delve into it. And when you talk about a quest, talk about someone's passion. And you don't have to define, it's not about the meaning of life. I love that he says that. It doesn't have to be, oh, this is the meaning of life. No, it's a quest. It's something you're going to gain. I know people who have started several businesses. Some of them worked, some of them didn't. It all depends on you guys. And we'll talk more about entrepreneurship, a little bit down the road here. Let's get a little bit back into the lecture. Oh, why I jumped back to the first thing. All right, hold on. Oh, we're into it. All right. So we're talking about how you form a business. There are a few different ways. One is sole proprietorship. Sole proprietorship. Wait, let me check something here. Hold on. I'm sorry. Oh yeah, I'm cool. All right. Sole proprietorship is the most common form of business. A business owned and usually managed by one person. They may have other manager too, but it's usually the owner is the manager. Partnerships are another legal form of business where you have two or more owners. Corporations are legal entities. We're going to get into that here a little bit further in the lecture. They are actually a legal entity. They actually are basically, they're not a person, of course, but they are considered like a person in courts and that sort of thing, and to the government. They have authority to act and have liability separate from the owners. So owning a corporation is different. If you look at sole proprietorship, and this is an interesting graph the author has for you, 72% of, or 20%, the corporations make up 20% of the total. So you look on that left graph, 20% of companies are corporations. 72% are sole proprietorships. Most of the businesses in this country are sole proprietorships. The other ones are some form of partnership. But if you look at the other one, corporations may only be 20% of businesses, but they have 81% of the total receipts. That means they bring in 81% of the money. So proprietorships, the most common, only bring in 6%. Partnerships bring in more. So when you talk sole proprietorships, it's small business. A lot of them are family owned. They're not looking to grow. They just want to own their shop or their store or their business. A lot of them work right out of their homes. So what are some of the advantages? Well, they're easy to start and end. It's very easy to start a proprietorship, sole proprietorship. It's very easy to close it down. You are your own boss. It's your place, man. It's your baby. You take pride in it. You get a lot of pride out of it. You can leave a legacy to your family. A lot of people that own sole proprietorships do this. They want to leave the store, the business to their kids and grandkids. You retain all the company profits. You're not sharing it with anybody. And there are no special tax situations. You're basically you're taxed on what you make. Disadvantages, the biggest one is unlimited liability. You're responsible for all debts of that company, and it can even get into your personal items. right? If your company goes bad and you're a sole proprietorship, they can go after your house and your car and your savings and stuff like that. So it can get ugly. You don't have as many financial resources as a corporation or a partnership have. And there's management difficulties. A lot of times you're dealing with family and you're small and it's hard to keep people and get people in there and get them to stay. Overwhelming time commitment. I mean, it's your baby, yes, but you usually can't afford to hire too many people. And even if you can, you're going to end up working a lot. There are no fringe benefits. When you work for a corporation, you get so many days vacation, you get health care, all the retirement plan. None of that comes with a sole proprietorship. You have to make all that yourself. It's hard to grow a sole proprietorship, mainly because of the amount of time you have to put into just running the business. And a lot of times they have a limited lifespan. They don't always last forever. I mean, you think about that when you go in, you want it to, you want to pass it down to your kids. It may not last long enough to pass down to your kids. So we're not going to go through the test prep because we basically just talked about it. The advantages and disadvantages of sole proprietorship and the unlimited liability, which is the biggest disadvantage. It's a major drawback. Why is it a major drawback? Because they can come after your personal items, your home, your car, and anything else that you own. Partnerships are the next step. A general partnership is a partnership in which all the owners share in the operating the business, and they all assume the liability as well. Limited partnerships are a little different. You have one or two people who manage the business, and then you have limited partners who are, yes, they're partners, but they're not managing partners. Basically, they're investors. They're people who put money in. Limited partnerships are actually rather popular. Some people don't want to run the business. They just want to put money in it. They want to invest and make some money out of it. But limited partners have to be paid, just like they're maybe not paid in the same way the managing partners are, but you still have to pay them. They still have to get paid. General partner is the owner or partner who has unlimited liability and is active in managing the firm. You also hear these people called managing partners. The author uses the term general partner, and that is correct, but you often hear that people say they're referred to as managing partners. A limited partner is usually, as we just said, someone who invests money, and they don't have any management responsibility, but they do have liability. If the business goes under as a partnership, they're liable for the debts of the business as well. Limited liability is the responsibility of a business owners for losses only up to the amount they invest. Now, this has to be written into the agreement. Limited partners and shareholders have limited liability. So a limited partner may have if it's written, and it's probably actually, I've helped with some of these contracts, it probably is written in, that you have a limited partner. They don't want the liability. Some of them will, if it's a family member, they'll take part of it because they know the family member can't carry all the liability. But in regular partnerships, a lot of times limited partner will be like, no, I just want to put in money, but the liability is on you. And this has to be written into the contract, into the agreement. Master limited partnerships are a little bit different. It looks a lot like a corporation, but it's not a corporation. It even acts like a corporation, but it's taxed like a partnership and thus avoids the corporate income tax, which is higher. Yeah, these have actually gotten more popular in recent years. They kind of were big in the early 80s and they died off for a while. And in the last 10, 15 years, you've seen these started to come back, or they've gotten more popular. Limited liability partnerships, which by the way, you see this with law firms all the time. They'll do an LLP. A partnership that limits partners' risk of losing their personal assets to only their own acts and omissions. In other words, if the business goes under, you're only going to be liable if it was because of something you did or someone did who you supervise. All right. You have limited liability in the fact that if it's just business went bad, you're not going to be liable for the debts or all the debts. However, if there is something that you did that caused it, they're going to come back at you. All right. It's 1:24. So let's stop sharing for a second and give you guys a break. And it's 1:24. Let's come back at 1:35. How's that sound? All right, guys. See you in a few. And I remember to hit record again. That's a big one for me. I'm getting better at this. All right, guys. So let's get back into how you start a business. And again, this part of the lecture, it's basic. It's about It's basically about all your different options to the kind of business that you can start. And it's something that you, if you're going to be an entrepreneur, you really want to consider. Partnerships have their advantages and disadvantages as well. You have more financial resources because you have partners working with you, and you have other partners who have invested in. Shared management and pooled contemporary skills and knowledge. Yeah, you do. You're sharing the management duties, gives you a little more time, and you're going to have different strengths and weaknesses of the different partners, which is going to help. You have a better chance for survival, so odds are you're going to last longer. And again, there's no special taxes. You're just taxed on whatever you make. What a lot of partnerships do, by the way, is they try not to make a profit. And I know you're probably thinking, Professor Long, why would they not want to make a profit? Or they make a limited profit? What they'll do, they'll make a profit to pay the limited partners, or they'll have a payment agreement with the limited partners. They'll pay themselves a salary to keep the profits down. Why? Because then you're taxed less on the profit, but you're also taxed on the salary, paying yourself a salary. So you still have a payroll tax, but it doesn't quite add up the same. It's a little better. The disadvantages is unlimited liability. Again, just like a sole proprietorship, if you're a general partner, managing partner, they can come after you. The limited partners, it depends on how the agreement's set up, but they may not have as much liability. Division of profits. You have to divide the profits up. You don't get them all yourself like you do with your sole proprietor. And partners can have disagreements, guys, and it's going to happen. I know a couple of different partnerships I've worked with that have worked really well and did real well. And interesting, one of the guys told me one time, David Weiner, has some restaurants down in DC, really good guy. He mentioned this. If I remember, I think it was David, if I remember correctly. He said, you want to have a couple of partners who aren't the same as you, who think different than you, have a different personality. You actually tend to blend together well that way. One of the most famous duos ever, it was actually a partnership, and they were actually corporate partners, but was Dale Carnegie, was Carnegie, Andrew Carnegie and Freck. I forget Freck's last name, his partner, but they at the end hated each other. Freck wasn't a very Frick wasn't a very likable guy in the first place, and he and Carnegie really went at it. And at the end, when Carnegie tried to make up, he said, we should meet. And Frick's response was, I'll meet you in hell, which is, by the way, the name of the book. So if you want to read the book about the two, it's a really interesting book, because that time period of American entrepreneurship is interesting as well. But it's called I'll Meet You in Hell. And it's about Frick and about mainly about Andrew Carnegie. It can be also difficult to terminate a partnership. Now, what you have to do, the termination term should be agreed to when you're forming the partnership. It should be in the contract that of the founding of the partnership. When you have that initial contract, your agreement, you agree, here's how, if we ever terminate, here's how we're going to terminate. It will eliminate a lot of fighting and a lot of legal battles if you do it that way. That is key advice I've heard many lawyers give. Here's a nice example the author gives you. Chuck and Latoya Elin. They took their love of travel and wine from their marriage and turned it into a business. Pop the Cork, a company that organizes tours of Georgia's wine country. Great idea. But if you think about it, and I'm not going to ask you to flat out answer the question, but there are potential advantages and disadvantages of becoming partners with a spouse or family member. I think there's more disadvantages than advantages personally. That's just me. It can really work. I've seen situations where it really works, and I've seen situations where it's totally exploded and become ugly and involved in divorces and lawsuits and everything. You know, a lot of business people will tell you don't do business with family. I know a lot of partnerships where the families have invested and have been limited partners, so it's only the money. That's only their money in there helping you out. It's not them working together on a day-to-day basis. With some marriages, it may not work. Also with siblings, it can get ugly. So there are advantages and disadvantages to becoming business partners with a family member. Evidently with these two, it worked, and they look very happy there, of course. And evidently, you know, I don't think the author would be using them. Of course, you never know. This might have been 2 years ago. They may hate each other now. So you have no idea, but not always the best idea. And the author does a great job here of questions asked when choosing a business partner. And it's really thorough. You know, do you share the same goals? Do you share the same vision? That's a key one. You got to have the same vision of the company's future. What skills does this other person bring to the table? Yeah, let's form a partnership. Well, that's great, but are our skill levels the same? Or are you bringing stuff to the table that I don't have, and maybe the partnership can use that, and vice versa? Are those skills the same as yours? We just talked about that. What contacts, resources, or special attributes does a person bring to their business? Will they bring a lot of business just by being your partner, right? Will people come there because of them? What resources and other things do they have? What type of decision maker is the person? Oh, that's a big one, man. That's a big one. Does this take this person forever to make a decision? Do they hem and haw? Or worse yet, do they make a decision, come back a day later and decide they changed their mind? If you're trying to do business, that's a nightmare, man. You got to set your tracks and go. You can't be constantly changing and hemming and hawing. Is this someone with whom you could happily share authority? Yeah, can you share the authority? Can you work together? Is a big one. Do you trust each other? Any relationship is built on trust, guys. Any relationship. I don't care if it's a romantic relationship. I don't care if it's a friendship. I don't care if it's a business partnership. Trust is key. Trust is number one. If you don't feel you can trust a person, you can't be in business with them. And don't do it thinking you can make it work. You won't make it work. It doesn't work that way. That's not how it happens. How does the person respond to adversity? How are they going to handle it if things go bad? And if you don't know that, you might want to find out, because that is a huge one as well. Does he or she try to solve the problems or try to defend his or her ego? Ooh, that's a huge one. That's a huge one, man. You got to be able to let go of that ego. You can't be defensive. One of the things I learned when I was a young manager, I was like most other young managers. I was always on the defensive if I was accused of anything. It doesn't work that way. If you make a mistake, you got to own it and correct it. That's how management is. If you want to be a successful manager, you have to be that way. And if this person you're getting in business with isn't that way, you're going to really have problems. Can the person accept constructive criticism? Yeah, again, falls under the same line as the one prior to that. You got to be able to accept constructive criticism, and it's hard to do. It's usually something you kind of learn as you go through business. Some people learn it earlier. I wasn't good at it when I was a young manager. It took me a while to come around to that. I finally got good at it, but it wasn't something I did right away. I had a bit of an ego. I had a bit of a chip on my shoulder when I was younger. It's easier to say that now that you got some of the gray hairs on top and you're looking back, but when I was a younger person, yeah, I could let go of that ego a little faster than I did. To what extent can you build fun and exciting relationship into the partnership? There's got to be a level of fun. If there's not a level of fun, it's going to be horrible. It's going to be a horrible life, and you don't want that. And the partner doesn't want that either. So can you have fun with this person? And I love the bottom part. This is really good. There's no such thing as a perfect partner, but you should ask some common thoughts on the business. Ask yourself. And these are a great list of questions. I suggest you grab this and hold on to it. Because if you ever down the road and you want to do a partnership, these are great questions to ask yourself before you get into it. You did a really good job with this. So what is the difference between a limited partner and general partner? General partners tend to be managing partners. They're an owner, but they're also working the business. Limited partners are usually investors, and they normally don't have a lot of liability. It's usually written in the contract that their liability is minimal or none. They're just investing their money. But again, depending on how the contract's written, they could have some liability. It just depends on that. The author doesn't really touch on that too much, and he should. The advantages and disadvantages of partnerships. Well, the advantages are you have more financial resources. You're sharing the management duties. It's not all falling on you. You have another person to share these responsibilities with. Both you bring knowledge and skills to the table. You have a better chance of survival, and you have no special taxes. Oh man, did I? Yes, I did. I did start recording. What are some of the advantages and disadvantages? We did that. The disadvantages, unlimited liability. Again, just like sole proprietorships, man, if you're the general partner, it can really bring you down. They can go after your house and your car and your boat and everything. Division of profits. I don't own a boat, by the way. I know I mentioned boats every once in a while. I do not own a boat. I love boats, but I don't own a boat. I don't own a boat because I'm a golfer. And by the way, today I put my golf clubs in the car because tomorrow's going to be beautiful. I'm going to go try. I don't know if I'm going to play 9 or 18. I might just go to the driving range. But it's supposed to like 70 degrees tomorrow. It's supposed to like gorgeous. But little off track there. Disagreements among partners can be a huge problem, right? And you got to go back and ask those questions the author was talking about earlier. before you get into this. If you have someone you're going to fight with all the time, you don't want them to be exactly like you. They should be different, a different person, because they'll see things in a different way, but you don't want someone you're going to argue with all the time either. And it can be difficult to terminate the agreement. That's the other side. Now, the next level, corporations. Corporations are a completely different way of doing business. They are state chartered legal entities with the authority to act and have liabilities separate from its owners, the stockholders. The corporation becomes an entity of its own. If anyone sues, they sue the corporation. They do not sue you personally. They can't. Well, they can, but only in extreme circumstances. It enables many people to share in ownership. Because you're selling stock, you can bring a lot of people. You can get a lot of investment into a corporation. There are different types of corporations. There's different ones we can set up too, and we're going to get into that in a second, but there are different types. Alien corporations, no, they're not from outer space. I love that with the balloons. It just got shut down, by the way, recently. These people who think they're space aliens, no. I don't think we'd be able to shoot down space aliens, actually. So, but alien corporations do business in the United States, but are chartered in other countries. There are a lot of these. Uber is one. Uber is chartered. I think they're chartered like the Cayman Islands or something. But a lot of these companies will charter in like Ireland or the Cayman Islands or places like that. And it's to avoid U.S. taxes, which they're starting to crack down on that as well. Domestic corporations do business in the state in which they're chartered. So they're incorporated in this state and they do business in this state. And there are a lot of smaller corporations are that way. Foreign corporations, which a ton of them are, no, it doesn't mean they're from overseas. They do business in one state, but they're chartered in another. You have a lot of this because a lot of your corporations, and I think, does he give the percentage? 1/3 of all corporations, 33%, are chartered in Delaware. Delaware is the king of incorporations. They make the laws easy. They made the fees easy in order to get companies to incorporate there. So a lot of a third of your corporations in the U.S. are chartered in Delaware. You have closed and private corporations. They have stock that's held by a few people and is not available to the general public. These are usually families. A lot of times they're older families that have had a business for a long time. And the family owns the corporation. You have public corporations. They sell stock to the general public. Yeah, there's tons of them. GE, Disney, Marriott. I mean, it goes on. And IBM, all these different tech companies. Quasi-public corporations are chartered by the government as an approved monopoly and perform services to the general public. So you can buy stocks in some of these. A lot of them are in situations where you can only have one. I'll give you an example, a utility, right? A water company or an electric company. I apologize for this. I got some allergies going on. A water company or electric company or something like that. You can't have 2 electric companies running or 10 electric companies running lines in a city. It doesn't work. So they're chartered by the government and they are an approved monopoly, which means they're regulated because as we talked about in the first chapter, the free market system keeps prices down. Well, if there's no competition, price will jump right up. So the government controls the price. And they're quasi-public corporations. You can't actually buy either stocks or bonds in these corporations. Professional corporations are owned by those who offer professional services. A lot of these are business-to-business corporations. They're companies that do business with other companies. And there's nonprofit corporations or not-for-profit corporations, and the difference is very minor. We're not going to get into it. But the nonprofit corporations don't seek a personal profit for their owners. Most of these are charities. I mentioned before, right now I'm the president of a local charity. I'll probably stay on the board. I don't know if I'll stay as president after this year, but we're a nonprofit. We do charity work. We work with needy families in Alexandria. And so we're registered as a 501c3, which is a nonprofit corporation with the state of Virginia. So what are the advantages? Well, the limited liability is the huge one. Unlike with the sole proprietorship and the partnership, corporations have very little liability to their owners. You can raise a lot of money. The ability to raise a lot of money and get a lot of investment and really build and grow. The size can be small or large. The size is definitely an advantage. You can be huge if you want. Perpetual life. Corporations go on way after the owners die. Way after. Ease of ownership change. It's easy to change owners because it's just stock. You just sell it and buy it. The ease of attracting talented employees. A lot of people who are good, talented people want to work for big corporations. Why? Because they want the benefits. I mentioned that earlier. We were talking about entrepreneurship, how, you don't get those, corporate benefits that we take for granted, right? The paid vacations, the healthcare, the sick leave, and all that, all that stuff. Well, with a corporation, you get talented people because they want those things and they can get them. Separation of ownership from management. We're going to show that in a graph and talk about that in a moment, but it's a huge advantage. Disadvantages of corporations: initial cost. It costs a lot of money to set up a corporation, and you have to pay a lot of people, and it costs a lot of legal work to get it started. There's extensive paperwork. Depending on what you're doing, it can be a lot or less. If you're doing business with the government, I've actually done contract work with some of these companies that do business with the government. My God, it's a ton of work. Double taxation. You're taxed on the profits and you're taxed on any dividends paid to the corporation pays out. So you own stock, right? And you can be taxed on that, but then you can be taxed on it. You have to have 2 tax returns, basically. Size. That can be a disadvantage and an advantage. They can get too big, too hard to control. Difficulty in termination, right? It can be hard to terminate a corporation, to break it up once it gets big up and running. Possible conflict with stockholders and the board of directors. There will be conflict with stockholders and board of directors if you're a big corporation. It's just part of being a big corporation. Here's how it works, guys. This is a really good chart. On the top, and you notice how the top 2 blocks are not connected to the bottom pyramid. There's a reason for that. At the very top, you have the owners and the stockholders. They elect a board of directors. So they have a meeting. They legally have to have a meeting once a year. And not everyone attends. Some stockholders will vote by proxy, where that means they'll give their votes to another stockholder, and it gives this other stockholder more power, to be honest with you. A lot of guys will rally and they'll put out campaigns to get people to give them their proxy, so they can really, if they feel they want to really make a difference in the corporation. So they get together and each stockholder has a vote, and they elect a board of directors, a chairman and a board of directors, which is the next level down. These are the guys who hire the officers, the top managers, the CEO, the CFO, the CIO, all that kind of stuff. They hire the people who are going to actually run the corporation. Do you see where this gets into a lot of work? Yeah, the setup can be a nightmare. The officers set corporate objectives and select the managers. So once the officers are elected on the top of that pyramid, they're going to select the managers. The managers are going to actually run, well, the officers set the long range goals for the business. The managers run the business and set the short-term goals in order to achieve the long-term goals. And the employees are at the bottom. I personally think they should be at the top, but they're at the bottom. And the managers supervise and run the employees. This is a typical corporate setup. There can be a lot of problems with it. Notice the huge disconnect between the employees at the bottom and the stockholders at the top. Well, it's written that way for a reason. They don't know each other. They're probably never going to see each other. The owners and stockholders are so removed from the officers, they probably don't even know what's going on in the corporation. By the way, they don't care because all they do is own the stock. And they may sell that stock tomorrow. Right now, it's not doing well. I'm just going to sell it. It's a very impersonal relationship. Even though the board of directors are so far removed from the managers and the employees, it's not like a privately owned corporation where you just have like a few officers who are the owners. This is not that. This is a big corporation like a GE or a Disney or something. And again, there's a lot of distance between what's actually happening in the pyramid and the board of directors who just look at the results and say, well, okay, either you get a multi-million-dollar bonus or you get fired, mainly to the CEO. So there's a lot of difference there. Individuals can incorporate. Anyone can incorporate. Truckers can be private contractors and incorporate. Doctors, plumbers, athletes. You don't have to have this whole structure we see back here. You don't have to have this. All right. You can just be the pyramid part. You just be the smaller corporation. Stock is normally issued to outsiders when individuals incorporate. So they don't share the advantages and disadvantages of large corporations. Usually you have a limited amount of stock. And, maybe a few people helping you out will own it, or maybe just your family owns it, or just you own it. Major advantages are limited liability and possible tax benefits. So you're taking the liability off of yourself in some situations. Like a doctor can really be sued big time. Athletes can be sued. Plumbers, I'm sure plumbers get sued. Plumbers make a lot of money. And Cora, they amaze me. I can't do that work. I'm fairly handy, but plumbing, I don't even try. Oh man, plumbing, it's hard. It's hard. Another kind of corporation, that was what the corporations we were just talking about were called C Corps. All right. This is an S Corp. S Corp's a little different. They're a unique government creation that they look like a corporation, but they're taxed like a sole proprietorship or partnership. A little harder to set up as well. They have shareholders, they have directors, and they have employees, and they also benefit from limited liability, but the profits are taxed only as the income of the shareholders. So you get a tax on the income. All right, so on the profit line, it's not just you get taxed if the stock pays out dividends. You get taxed on the profit line. If an X corporation loses its S status, it may not operate under it again for at least 5 years. So if you do something, and we're not going to get into all the ifs and buts on this, but if for some reason you lose your S status, you got to wait 5 years to get it back again. You become a regular corporation for a while. So that makes a big difference too. Limited liability companies are similar to S corporations, and they have become very, very popular. I have a limited liability company. I am not using it right now that much. I use it when I get consulting work. If someone wants to me to do consulting work, I run it through my LLC. Since COVID, I haven't had much consulting work because I consult in the hospitality industry, and nobody in the hospitality industry has money right now. So, well, they're starting to again, but I'm also with the teaching and what I'm doing at Nova, that's taking up all the time too. But I do have an LLC. The advantages are, again, limited liability because you are technically a corporation. Or you're a limited liability company. You have the same limited liability as a corporation does. A choice of taxation. I just go ahead and get taxed on the profits because when I bring them in, it's not like it's something I'm living off of. So when I bring them in, it's usually not so high that I don't want to get taxed on them. If it ever got too high, then I would pay myself a salary to bring that down. But that's for another class. Flexible ownership rules. You can set up, they are very flexible. You can really set up any way you want. Flexible distribution of profits and losses. So you can even set up where the profits and losses go. Right now with mine, it would all go to me. I'm the only one. And operating flexibility. There's a ton of it. The disadvantages, there's no stop, and ownership is not transferable. So I cannot transfer my ownership to someone else if I want to. Fewer incentives, right? A whole lot of benefits and stuff. Taxes, because I can get double taxed, it can happen. And the paperwork, he says the paperwork, I have not found the paperwork to be that bad, at least not in Virginia. Other states might be different, but I haven't found it to be that bad in Virginia. Really haven't. So what are the major advantages and disadvantages of incorporating a business? Well, limited liability is the biggest advantage of doing a corporation. You can raise more money. It's easy to change ownership. You can attract talented employees. The disadvantages, initial costs, extensive paperwork, double taxation, 2 tax returns, the size. It can be hard to terminate it. You could have difficulties with your stockholders and your board of directors. So it can run a little rough. What's the role of stockholders? They're investors and they have limited liability. They elect a board of directors. Board of directors hires the officers to run the company. Stockholders are really removed as owners. If you buy stock in a corporation and someone gets injured by one of the corporation's products, are you sued? No, you're not. You have limited liability. The corporation itself is an entity. The corporation would get sued. That's where the limited liability comes from. That's one of the big advantages of buying stock in a company. And why are so many businesses choosing LLCs? Well, you get limited liability. You can pick how you want to be taxed as a partnership or a corporation. I'm taxed as a partnership right now if I bring in any money. Like I said, I use it sparingly. Flexible ownership rules, flexible distribution of profits and losses. So there's a lot of reasons to do all that. And we're stopping on the PowerPoint here today with the PowerPoint. Hold on. Why isn't there's my mouse. So let's do something here real quick. I'm going to give you a poll. Right there, poll question, guys. Which type of partnership would you most likely enter? So if you were going to do a partnership, not asking about corporations yet, but if you were going to do a partnership, which one would you do? let this run for a minute, see what you guys say.
Professor, I don't see the poll.
You should. People, I know people see it because there people are responding to it.
Answering?
Who was this? Who was speaking? I can't tell.
Veronica?
Veronica?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm not sure. I mean, 17 students have answered already. Is it hidden somehow? Did it get minimized or something? Is it behind the window you're in right now, perhaps?
Let me see.
It should pop up as a window on its own. All right, well, Veronica, which one would you do? A limited partnership, a general partnership, a master limited partnership, or a limited liability partnership? You can just tell me.
I'm gonna say a limited partnership.
Okay, we'll add you in that one. So let's end the poll. I'll share the results. Sorry about that. I'm not sure why that happened.
It's okay.
Let's share the results, guys. You should be able to see them now. So limited liability partnership, Veronica said yes as well. So that's 11 out of 19. That's the highest one. And 6 of you said general, 2 of you said limited partnership, and 1 said master limited partnership. Well, it's becoming a more popular choice, but you never get a lot on the master limited. You always get a lot of people say, yeah, I do the limited liability partnership. And it's obvious why, right? It's obvious why. So your liability is limited. You can make good money and you can choose how you're taxed. All right, good job, guys. All right, it's 2:02. It's time to rock and roll here. Pause.